In this episode, I'm going to be making a modular bridge. So we're going to start off with some foam core, we're going to cut a few triangles and a few square shapes. You can see here that I've left a lip on the top of the triangle pieces so that you can fit the bridge into it. And these are going to form the end sections that lead up to the bridge. We're going to assemble them as these kind of ramps. I then trimmed a plank so I could get the width of the bridge I wanted, make sure everything fits. And then we're going to trim some styrofoam down. And we're going to use this with the stonework on the bridge exterior. So cutting some longer lengths, we're going to make some kind of columns that will sit at the front and the back of the bridge. And we're going to give them some texture using a tinfoil ball. You can also use an actual rock for that if you have one handy. Then gluing these onto the back to be the main kind of supports for the bridge. Then for the stonework next to them, we're going to cut some triangles matching the size of the ramp. We're going to roll some texture onto them. And then going in with a sculpting tool, we're going to put the brickwork down. And this gives a much tidier, neater looking stonework than if you individually cut each brick. And it also saves you some time filling because you don't have deep kind of crevices between the bricks. You can go finer with this, go for a more kind of realistic scale brick, but I kind of like these oversized chunkier ones. They're a bit easier to paint and they're a bit more stylized for kind of fantasy worlds, but they also kind of fit in with real life stuff. So, do what you want. Then you want to add some cracks and crevices where the brickwork has been crumbling a bit. And then with some longer strips of styrofoam, we're going to cut a few large slabs into them. And we're going to glue this on the top to be the sort of top layer of the stonework. Then a smaller triangular piece to ramp at the very bottom and connect it to the ground, along with two more shorter columns. Then, if you want to, you can add some slabs on top of the bridge and make it look like it's paved. I did this on one of the ends, but not the other one. You could also put stairs in here if you've gone for too steep a gradient. Depends if you want stuff to be able to stand on it or not, and of course the kind of architectural style that you want to go for. If it's in like the middle of a city, then maybe you do want stairs. Then we're going to make a second one, very similar, but a few small differences. And we're going to mix up some texture paste. This is a mixture of cork flock and a thicker basing drip. And we're going to mix that together with about 1:1 part PVA. And make a slight variation on the normal paste here, adding a little bit of black paint. This will help with a bit of the base coating, just in case I miss any areas. Because it can be harder to get the areas between the flock where it kind of just goes into a mini recess. And we're going to smear this paste all over the top where we want that to be dirt, and on the sides where we want that to be some kind of turf. I did mount this on some foam core, just to give it a bit more stability. You can also use this paste for filling any big gaps in the stonework. Or you can just put it on top of the stonework, add a bit more kind of crumbling effect. It's also good for hiding any kind of hard edges where, for instance, the edge of the foam core might show through. Now, one last thing to make before we do the actual bridge is a support for the middle. So this is sort of a collection of stonework that sits in the middle of the river, or ravine, and it'll have a wooden post atop it. So cutting an oval shape with styrofoam, we're going to carve a sort of very rough stone texture into it, texture it with tinfoil ball. I do this before and after I sculpt the stonework in, because I find that gets the most kind of natural results, because you kind of define those gaps between the stones and then you push them slightly closer together anyway. And now we can start making the actual bridge. So with 2 lengths of balsa wood, we're going to get the width of the bridge we want, and then using our placeholder plank, we're going to make sure that sits the same width all across. And when we're happy with that, we can trim the ends off a bunch of coffee stirrers. I found using clippers for this actually broke my clippers, so I resorted to the saw. And then, once you've cut enough planks, glue them 1 on each end first, so you can get it completely square, and then fill in the planks between. If you want to, you can use a wire brush or the edge of a tool to kind of sculpt some grain onto these. Then, with 2 more lengths, just going to add some supports along the side. With some of the offcuts for those coffee stirrers, I'm going to glue those to be the lengthway supports for the handrail. Now, a lot of the bridge will depend on what type you want. You might just want it to be planks, you might want to have a few planks missing. I'll probably do a broken kind of segment later on so I can swap it in and out if the bridge gets destroyed. But for now, going for a very kind of atypical medieval fantasy bridge. And with those handrails attached, we are going to make the post for the support. So just using a knife to mark the height of the bridge. Now I find that you can always measure and do the kind of math stuff beforehand, but a lot of the time, once you add the texture onto the styrofoam, you can never account for the exact height. So it's easier just to do it as you're going along with your eye. So cutting some more lengths of balsa wood, and then some cross sections to make some sideways supports. Then we want to test that underneath the bridge, make sure it is the right height and it's not snagging on anything. And then we move on to the painting, and we're going to start, as always, with a layer of black gesso on everything to help seal it and help fill any gaps and give us a base colour to work with. So when you're painting the wood, you probably want to water the paint down a little bit so you get some more kind of absorption. Make it a bit easier to get a coat of paint on. And once that layer is dry, we're going to take our brown paint and give a coat to everything. We want to leave a few kind of areas of black within the deepest recesses, but just hit everything with a decent coat of brown paint. Now, here we see where I watered down the paint properly, and it's a lot easier to get onto the wood. And where you can, you want to follow the grain of the wood while painting it. Then, mixing some white and a tiny bit of black together, we're going to make a sort of granite grey colour, and we're going to paint all the stonework with that. Then, adding some more brown into it, we're going to give a slightly lighter brown colour to the bridge. This will be hit with a dark wash later, so it might look a bit too bright at this point. But making a much lighter grey colour, we're going to hit the top of the stonework again. This is a sort of heavy-handed dry brush, and you only want to hit the top kind of 50% of the model, because you want to have that kind of fake simulated lighting. And hitting the sidewalks and anywhere you want the stonework to show beneath the kind of dirt that's been trodden on top of the bridge. Then, with a very watered down black paint, we're going to go over the entire bridge again, and we're going to darken it down and kind of unify the tone across it. Then, doing very similar with a green paint, we're going to get some kind of weather-worn effect on the bridge, as well as on the stonework. This is going to be where the planks have gotten wet and they're maybe starting to rot a bit, or where they have a bit of kind of moss and algae growing on them. And doing the same with the bottom of the stonework where it would touch the water. Or if not water, it can just be a bit of plant growth. If you go kind of too strong with the paint, you can just load your brush with water, as I do here, and you can just dab it down. And this will dilute the paint on the model and should hopefully save it. Then, going over some PVA, we're going to coat the sides of the base as well as the front. And we're going to be applying some static grass over the top. Now, I aimed mostly where the edge of the foam core was still a bit too visible. Then, with our static grass applicator, we're going to sprinkle over the PVA. And, as always, be careful when using this thing. It is surprising how much of a shock two double-hit batteries can give you. Then, while that was drying, I noticed the dirt was a bit too bland, so I hit that with a lighter brown coat, just hitting the highlights on top of it. Then, once that's all dry, I'm going to go in with some grass clumps and add a bit more kind of height variance to the edges. So I put a few kind of small shrubs along the edge. Then, with the smaller pieces, went in and put them between the paving slabs and some of the stonework on the sides, so you had some actual stuff growing out of the cracks. And there we go, our finished modular bridge. So you can swap out either end section, or if you want, you can have it as a drawbridge, or maybe some kind of jetty if you've got a ship. If you make another sport section, you could add another central bridge and make it even longer. And it even doubles as a raft. Thanks for watching, guys. Catch you next video.